Hello everybody and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over the receivers that we will possibly see in the 2025 NFL draft. And obviously this is a little bit early, and the tape that I took notes on was the 2023 tape. So these receivers will have all of 2024 to prove me wrong if I have a guy lower or point out something they don't do so well. They have a whole nother year in college football to improve and like I said, prove me wrong. This is a top 15 list and we'll start with number 1. And that number 1 is Tetairoa McMillan, or Tetairoa McMillan, however you say it, but he's huge. 6'5", 205. He's a junior coming into this upcoming season of college football. He has some of the best plays in this entire class. Wow plays, contested catch scenarios, insane jump ball plays. He does it all at a very, very high level. When you're talking about wow factor, there is no more wow factor than with Tetairoa McMillan. I'm gonna butcher it the whole time. I know people just call him Tet, but you know, we're getting technical here. Talk about getting technical. I was actually questioning the 6'5" height that he has listed down at Arizona, but when he stood up next to 6'5" Latu, and he looks like the same height or maybe an inch smaller, so 6'4", 6'5", but he legitimately looks 6'4", 6'5", and I got reassured when I was like, oh, he's next to Latu, and then I realized like, oh, he's like right next to Latu, and I was starting to question some of that 6'5" height. Went ahead and Googled Latu and see what his combine looked like, and yeah, it was 6'5", so it's a legit size for Tet. He was moved all over in the Arizona offense and lined up everywhere from in line to out wide. He played, you know, all the way out wide, slot, in line, and everything in between. Any alignment you want to look at, if they're stacking a 3 on one side of the formation or whatever it's called. He was just very willy-nilly in terms of alignment and could do it from anywhere. 6'5" typically doesn't move like that. He has some amazing footwork and movement skills for his length and his size. Some people kind of look at Mike Evans and say that's what a tall, like lanky, long receiver, like movement skills really impress, and Tet's the same way in my opinion. 6'5" normally doesn't look or move the way that he does. He can draw up to 5 flags a game if you just throw the ball up. There were times he'd get held for 10 yards and also drew a DPI, and some weren't called. Like there was, I think, about 3 against Colorado, or maybe 2 against Colorado and 1 versus someone else. I watched it and it was very blatant defensive pass interference and it just wasn't called. And there were a few things the same way with holding penalties, like a nickel corner couldn't deal with him, so he just draped onto him for the first 10 yards while McMillan's still making a play on that same play that he's getting held for 10 yards. He can make contested grabs in the air, but also with guys draped on the back of him. McMillan has great strength and concentration. That comes with some of that physicality. You know, you're working through a pack of guys and you come out of it, another guy's chasing you down in man coverage, playing like trail technique or something. You're getting targeted, the ball's in the air, the guy's going to try to jump on you. Tet's just carrying him on his back while making the catch, and the guy's trying to swat it away. So it's great concentration, it's great physicality, and quite honestly it's consistently happening for him as well. McMillan makes the quarterback's job easier, staying in open zones and tempoing his routes. He also understands coming back to the ball or to the quarterback in terms of you know, someone's behind him and the quarterback's gonna throw it at him, and the guy behind him might be able to reach around and swat the ball from your chest or whatever if you're going to catch it here or body catch it. So instead he'll work back towards the ball and he'll catch it and work off that and give himself some separation from behind. He endures some brutal hits and gets right back up. He has some blocks where he delivers some good hits too. I don't know how that ties in together. This is a dumbass note that I'm looking at here. He endures some brutal hits, he gets right back up. Oh, also, by the way, there's some blocks where he knocks the guy down. Cool, like that could have been a separate note, but either way, there are some pretty nasty hits. He's a pretty big hitbox in terms of targets, and definitely has taken some brutal ones and got right back up, or the next play he's still out on the field. So he has the best and strongest hands in the class. He caught everything from fully extended all the way to his toes with ease, and the way that I kind of meant by this is he could reach all the way up, make a catch from him being fully extended at 6'5", and then all the way down below his knees, and he did it, and it looked nice, easy, and pretty natural for him. Quarterback play wasn't the best, whether he was just missed or wasn't even seen when he was wide open. When I mean missed, it's not the same as what I was saying when he wasn't seen. Either the quarterback missed the pass, or he was overlooked and wasn't seen in the play completely. And there were times he was wide open, or like I said, just the quarterback couldn't hit him, which is kind of hard to think about. 6'5", 205, huge dude, and I don't know how you miss him. Bad movement blocks. He's more stationary and works best when he engages the blocks and kind of goes towards them. He also had some plays where I question the effort in the block game as well. Maybe, third quarter, he's been blocking all game and he's been taking some hits or whatever, and some of that starts to fade and you start to kind of feel it towards the end of the game, and he's like nah, this won't matter, and kind of lets the guy pass, and he blows up the run. So it's a little tough. I mean, putting it in that perspective, I guess, right? But there's still times and receivers that will make those blocks and plays and that sort of effort. Last but not least, I don't think he's a refined route runner, but it's also not his game, but it would be great for him to be making strides in that area and facet of the game. When you look at him, yeah, he makes separation here and there, mostly because of those longer strides and coming out of those pivots. And then on the plays that you look at, when he's making this separation, it's very instantaneous when the ball is thrown to him, instead of him making separation and keeping that separation. It's two different things. And so Tet just needs to maybe have a little bit better route running. But like I said, it's also not in his game, so I wouldn't be really worried about that. And I don't see that as a huge negative, because he still does make some of that easier separation, whether it's underneath, or I see it especially in the middle of the field, whether it's against a nickel corner, even a boundary corner. He does a good job pivoting and keeping his strides away from the boundary and whatnot. So Tetairoa, I don't know, McMillan, sensational player that made huge plays all season long. He's a jump ball monster and someone that could take over a game and carry an offense to a win, quite literally. Some of you guys might have expected to see this guy at number 1, but it's Luther Burden at number 2, and we're gonna have this conversation. I don't think he's as good as people are making him seem. He's even a tier down from Tet McMillan, in my opinion, and we'll talk why. And maybe the fact that he's not the type of receiver I like, I guess, going off last year too. I really didn't like those Malachi Corley, Malik Washington. I didn't like that archetype, and they really weren't viewed high in my eyes. And now I'll get to see how that works out in the NFL for my first year evaluator and draft analyst, if you will. But on first impression, he looks much bigger than I thought he'd be. I thought, 5'11", 208, and I kind of profiled him with not Malik Washington, but in a sense, there's a certain archetype these guys are, and it's 5'10" through 8, maybe 200, 205, and he was 5'11", 208, and I could have seen him as a 6'1", 205 type of build as well. If someone wrote that down on paper, it's believable. He's constantly in motion, making plays out of the backfield, and I like that because it gives him experience as a weapon and being used as an asset in an offense, instead of, just playing the slot and then you're playing out of the slot, and when you get to the league, being experienced or getting experience for your first time as a real focal point, or someone that is constantly in motion, trick plays, reverse, all that good stuff that comes with being an important part of an offense. The athleticism seemed to pass the eye test. I wasn't overwhelmed by it, but the acceleration mainly caught my eye. 5'11", 208, and I think he accelerates better than a lot of the other guys that might be holding a little bit less weight as well. I think he was pretty good, and I thought that's what stood out mainly with the athletic profile of Burden's, is the acceleration and the way he can get up to speed. And then the yards after catch ability obviously couldn't go without being stated. Everyone seems to compare him to Deebo Samuel, which is BS, but that pushed aside, I still do think he is pretty good after the catch, and probably the best in this class, and definitely the best inside this top 15 that I did. The blocking game isn't great for Burden, and definitely has more bad than good in his blocking game or reps, or the sample size I saw at least. Plays less snaps than you'd expect for a wide receiver 1. I don't want to speculate, but I worry about his fitness and stamina, because there's definitely times where, goes out, makes a big play or something, or he ran a whole lot, and then he's not on the field for the first 5 downs or so of the next drive, and I get a little concerned. And like I said, don't really speculate or sit here and hang up on this. I think he was just subbed out of the game a lot more than you'd think for a typical wide receiver 1 in the entire class, let alone for an individual team. There's times I definitely question the effort. Sometimes I don't know with this offense truly. It is super hard to tell because they all like jog downfield on like a 4-vert, concept, and then it ends up being like a run or a screenplay, and then they engage late, and then they start doing all this stuff to block or manipulate the defenders. But there's definitely plays where I worry that he's not trying, or there's not emphasis on a certain part of what he's doing. Like he'll jog along and then maybe run like an in-cut route, and the quarterback still going through his reads, maybe scrambles out left or something, and he's still kind of just jogging along, or really didn't take that rep that seriously. People have said that he's good at contested catches and catching in traffic, when I must have watched the wrong like 5 to 6 games. I watched the most games on Luther Burden than anybody else in this receiving class, and it was mostly because I didn't see what everybody else was talking about, especially with the physicality of his game. I didn't think he was great with contested catches or catching in traffic at all. I thought that there was I think 1 out of like 5 plays that he actually ended up catching the ball through that contact. Mizzou's offense was really weird and kind of confusing at times, and it set him up in poor situations. And like I said, it was just kind of genuinely hard to tell about some of the effort questions, and that's why I don't really want to dive into that and speculate there. My issue is kind of everywhere else with him, and we'll kind of jump into that. He lacks polish as an all-around wide receiver, route refinement, coming back to the ball, and just understanding the game in general. Deep threat ability needs to improve a little bit, in my opinion. Once he gets past, he likes to kind of stick with the guy and maybe out physical him. It's not a good way to phrase it at all, but the understanding of the game definitely can stand to improve. And I shouldn't have expectations because of evaluations like this one. It's not Burton's fault he's being called the best in the nation almost unanimously, but I disagree. I don't think he gets the label as the player he is right now. The upside is high, sure, and I can see him making big strides, working on his craft, coming out swinging in 2024, but I don't think he gets the label as the best in the nation. And everyone's almost saying that, like I said, unanimously, which blows my mind. And I will do a video on Luther Burden and kind of explain my look at it and kind of my opinions, because the tape was a little different than I expected. Like I said, I just really shouldn't build expectations, especially because of evaluations like this one. But once you see it, guys, compared to Deebo Samuel, you obviously build up a certain type of expectation, or you want this guy to be Deebo and maybe a little bit better, or maybe separates more. Like, there are expectations I had that I really shouldn't have, because it was, I guess, disappointing at the end of the day, which I hate to use a word like that with a wide receiver 2. Like, I still have him as my wide receiver 2, and people will still, come shouting at me in the comments, I'm sure. Isaiah Bond, someone I'm extremely high on, I think, compared to consensus. A lot of people don't see him this high, but the Texas, or I guess the Alabama transfer that headed to Texas over the offseason, going into his junior year, 5'11", 180. He's pretty small, but when you watch him, he actually looks like a receiver. I've been watching receivers, and Bond is the first to remind me of what I saw through the top 15 wide receivers last year alone. I watched that whole class, and all of them looked like, really good receivers. And then I watched this class and kind of the depth, and I'm like they just don't look the same. Maybe something's wrong. Maybe I forgot something. And no, I got to Bond, and it was like, okay, he actually looks like what I saw from the strong receivers last year. And there were a lot of them last year, which makes me think that this class is very not so great compared to last year's. Changed alignment damn near every play, so he has experience everywhere, and something we kind of talked about with Tetairoa McMillan. It was the ability to take snaps from everywhere, experience everywhere, win from everywhere, and I thought the same thing with Isaiah Bond. Great footwork overall. He can break off his routes well. He stops and decelerates really quick, and turns and changes directions at high speeds really well too, and a lot of that is it correlates to his route running and the ability to separate, which I liked with Isaiah Bond more than a lot of other receivers in this class for sure. He's pretty quick and has good deep speed, and he reaches top speed quickly. and use that term with someone that might look a little bit slower but builds as the rep goes on. He already starts pretty fast and continues to build, which is a little bit different. Looks like he's got a high motor and plenty of stamina. He'll run at full speed all day between deep routes, motions, running crossers, not crossers. I don't know what those are, but he never stops running and stays on the field out there. Stamina, high motor, like I said, seems to be pretty good. Now, this might be a little hypocritical. I think Jalen Milroe was my number 4 quarterback. He was a big reason I'm sure Isaiah Bond transferred. There are so many plays from the receivers on Alabama that you kind of have to just put your hands up on your head and kind of wonder why the ball wasn't thrown or what the hell went on, because there are plenty and a pretty big sample size of, of examples of what I'm talking about with Jalen Milroe, just missing or something's off page or something isn't connecting or whatever went on. It wasn't very pretty. And definitely had some struggles there. And another thing, kind of nitpicky here with Isaiah Bond, he stumbles every here and there, but I don't know. It could just be like turf, but he did it in the games I watched, and it seemed to be a pretty consistent thing. But like I said, has good footwork and pretty quick. So with guys with more active and quicker feet, sometimes they get caught up in their own feet at times. Kind of reminds me of a small, less naturally gifted Adonai Mitchell with way better work ethic and effort. He ran up and down the field for Bama and seemed to have great stamina, but purely off projection and the upside. I feel like the upside and the ceiling for Isaiah Bond could be receiver 1 in this class. It depends on how big the jump is from last year to this year. The way I'm saying he can be, see the craziness here. We've seen bigger jumps from other people before, but Bond really needs to impress to get that status for me. But I'm saying, but purely off the ceiling or the upside, he could be a really good player. And I'm already looking at a lot of that, with projection and all. That's why he's my number 3, is because of projection. If you just took last year's tape and put it down, he's probably not rated this high. But like I said, with projection and the promise he shows, I'm obviously going to put him a little bit higher. Wide receiver 4 in this class, and I think a receiver I had at like wide receiver 5 last year was Emeka Egbuka. So quite a step down. Ohio State's senior receiver, 6'1", 205 is what he's listed at. Looking at a very savvy route runner that has instinctual, smart, calculated feel when trying to get open. And I think that that's a big part of like his game is the, and we're looking, and we just talked about him being a senior, put that experience and the smart and, like I said, instinctual, calculated feel. I feel like a lot of that comes in with that experience. You can get creative with Emeka Egbuka's usage and the part he plays in an offense, if you will, and you can stick him in the slot, but he can also go out wide. He can motion back in, he can make a block. It don't matter, Mecca gets the job done, and that's what you're looking for. I guess what I'm trying to say, that that skill set can be put everywhere, like not jokingly, but I'm pretty serious when I say his usage can project to be like anywhere on the field, and it really comes down to a team's scheme and specific, thought process with Egbuka. I like his hands. They look natural and soft, but when he needs to pluck the ball out of the air, you can rely on him to do that. Forget some of that soft hand BS, go up and snatch it. He can do that as well. He has a knack for making the first guy miss after the catch, and after I had actually written down this note, I remember he didn't do it for the rest of the game that I had been watching when I wrote that note down, and I was kind of contemplating, taking it out, because like he can at times make the first guy miss, or maybe change up the note, but I don't think I would, because he did it so often. But he makes the guy miss, and even when he does build up some of that speed, he's pretty tough to bring down. We talked about he's pretty filled out. He's a bigger guy, and I think that he can do quite a bit after the catch, actually. He does this so well, but he attacks the leverage and the hips, and it's really hard to explain, and that's on a DB, by the way. He attacks the leverage and the hips of a DB. It's hard to explain, but basically sets up defenders without laying a hand on them, and just does it a lot with the way he's running the route, or it looks like he's, like I said, attacking leverage and hips, and the way that the kind of nuance that Emeka has. It's I don't know if I'd say rare, because I truly don't know how rare it is, but the way that he does his work and the way that his nuance looks, it's a lot different and unlike anyone in this class. And it was also kind of a separator in last year's class. Though he is a bigger receiver and he actually struggles with some of that physicality, There's plays where he gets stopped in his tracks by a linebacker, gets stopped in his tracks by a linebacker, or even a safety that's crashing down, playing in the middle of the field or whatever, you know, running over the middle, a linebacker's in his way, and he gets absolutely shut down. And he's filled out. We said it. He's big. There's times where he definitely struggles with that. His speed and athleticism, I don't think he's ever like really going to stretch the field or just like run vertically straight line. I don't think he's like a blazing, you know, runner. I don't think he's I don't want to say a deep threat, because he can get past you and he's done it. But I just, again, I maybe at 4.5 40 yard is kind of where I'm looking at and going with this note. Last but not least, blocking at the point of attack. He'll get to the guy he's blocking, but when it's time for the DB to get off the block, normally the DB can go at will, you know, dictating the block. He doesn't really do that real well. He gets up to him, he holds him there, and kind of tries to gain that leverage. But when the running back or whoever's getting the ball and is running past Emeka Egbuka, and it's time for the DB to pounce in and shrug Emeka off, the DB doesn't have a whole lot of struggle doing so. Emeka was kind of fun but boring to watch. He gets open in unique ways, and it's very subtle, and that's what makes it fun. And you really have to break it down to see how he makes his money as a receiver. I like the seniority in his game and the way he can help his quarterback more with his style of play, and I think that translates, and he has a good chance to be some quarterback's best friend, and especially if it's Will Howard this year at Ohio State. One of my favorites, and he had a chance to come out last year, but it's Tre Harris, the Ole Miss receiver going into his senior year. 6'2", 205, big contested catch type of receiver. And what I was going to say is he was, you know, rumored to come out last year and last year's class, summer scout, and all that good stuff. And I quite liked him last year, and not a whole lot has changed. I think he deals with defenders in his face pretty well, whether it's during a route or at the catch point, either or. I think that physicality's there. I think it's good enough to pass and withstand at the NFL level too. His releases all look the same but seem highly effective. I don't get it, but he uses his strength, length, and his quickness, and it all ties together really well. But it looks the same every time, whether it's a fake step inside and just kind of working out and pushing the guy away to the point where he can break off and maybe, you know, use a longer stride or whatever. But there's just something about it. It seems to work, and so you do you, I guess. Dominant on some of the back shoulder and contested catch opportunities he got, because he understands the leverage and how to use his length. And like I said, kind of the leverage, the body mass he has, it often, you know, overshadows a DB that he's against, especially in college. And so the way that he can reach up and maybe leverage his weight and strength around a DB was quite impressive. In my opinion, he actually looks bigger than 6'2", 205. I was thinking maybe 6'3" or even 6'4", and something like 215. Maybe Ole Miss is doing a sin or whatever and saying, we don't like Tre Harris, transfer, like they're trying to get him to go. Something's happening behind the scenes, and they're selling him cheap. It's 6'2", 205. I think he's bigger, or they're playing mind games with the NFL. And so once he comes into the combine going at 6'3", 215 or whatever, then they're like, oh, I didn't know he was like this big. That's huge. And then boom, stock raise right up because he measured well. All that aside, a crazy rant. I really like the way he runs a slant route, but that's all he runs, that and like a 5 or 10 yard dig, so DBs can catch on, you would imagine. I think he runs a vertical route and either gets thrown up back shoulder or gets some sort of contested catch opportunity. He runs slant routes, and he runs 5 to 10 or 5 or 10 yard dig routes, and that's pretty much it. And DBs kind of catch on to that by the second half, and there's a lot of nothing in the second half other than contested catch and no separation, stuff like that. For a bigger guy, I'd like him to be a more consistent blocker. He misses blocks and sometimes doesn't even hold up strong enough, and that's kind of interesting when you talk about, hey, he could be, you know, 6'3". I think he looks big, and then you're talking about him as a bad blocker overall and gets, you know, overpowered or stood up or whatever the deal is. That's pretty rare for a bigger receiver, especially at the college level. He accelerates pretty well, but I don't know about his top speed. If I had to guess, I'd say he's probably around a 4.55 40 time. And that's like kind of selling him short, I guess. You know, you never want to say this, because when he goes and runs a 4.4 and absolutely destroys this take that I have here, it just, that's what it looks like on tape. And so I hate to put it into a numerical value. That's just kind of the best way I could find myself phrasing it at the time. And I feel like 90% of the time he looks pretty slow, and like I just talked about, maybe a 4.55 type of guy or whatever. But there's these plays where he runs past the DB and I second guess myself. And when I say he lacks speed, you know, to take down that note, you need confidence in what you're saying, obviously. And 90% of the time I believe it, but there's these plays that stand out where, you know, he definitely looks a lot quicker quicker. Either way, Tre Harris is a designated contested catch receiver. He runs maybe 4 routes: a slant, a dig, a 9 route, and maybe the occasional crosser. He has a pretty good release. He makes separation on slants and not really anywhere else. He put the pieces together. You have a slant and go ball specialist that maybe has a chance to open up an NFL offense. It's probably not. I mean, people, Michael Thomas comes to mind, right? But I don't know. I don't know if he'll be that highly praised. Next guy, we'll talk about Tez Johnson, the Oregon receiver heading into his senior year. A lot of seniors in this list here, but 5'10", 160, a truly tiny human being. I think he has really good shake and hesitation on his routes, so he can set up a DB, and even a slight advantage goes a long way for Tez because of those quicks and some of that explosiveness. But what I kind of mean by this note, by the way, really good head shake and hesitations, and like you hear about hessies and stuff like, and he catches and freezes the guy over here. He has a very strong ability to make a DB guess, I guess, if you will, at the top of a route or when he's breaking off that route, and he's kind of freezing him up here, and then he flies the other way because he's got that slight advantage, and it goes a long way for a guy like Tez Johnson because he's pretty quick in getting out of that situation with his quickness and like I said, some of that explosiveness. Obviously had a good rapport with his brother Bo Nix at Oregon, but he probably learned how to have that sort of connection with future quarterbacks, including Dillon Gabriel, who's transferred to Oregon now. But what I kind of mean, obviously he had that good rapport. He's the adopted brother of the Nix family, and so Bo Nix was the quarterback at Oregon. Tez Johnson, they obviously had a very good connection and all that, and so he kind of learned the ability and how to have that sort of connection elsewhere and with other quarterbacks that he'd be playing with. He is a small player, sure, but he's not scared to catch in traffic or lower his shoulder, even get involved in the blocking game. He does. I'm Yoda now. Okay, he's small, but he can play big at times and do stuff against certain guys. He might feel like, if there's a 6'2", 185 boundary corner, he feels like he can do that. I don't think you'll see him plowing into a linebacker anytime soon, though. If Tez Johnson even gets presented with just 2 yards of space after a catch, he becomes a home run threat. He can make anyone miss and run past the defense. Straight up, simple as that. He can get up and go, home run, and like I said, it just takes a little bit of space for him to make his magic. And now we'll go to the cons list here. He's small as hell. That's the note. It's blatant as that. Physicality on his routes. He gets pushed around and even put on the ground time to time, which, yeah, not fun to watch. I think he was like the worst physicality I've seen on tape since Jalen McMillan last year was pretty bad, but Tez Johnson was not good. I think his hands need a little bit more polish. I wouldn't be surprised to see an improvement in that 2024 season. He has some drops and obviously some of those body catches. What I mean, you need a little bit more polish, maybe a little bit better hand usage and whatnot. But yeah, I just saw a few drops and he was more of a body catcher. So maybe a few changes over this offseason, see improvement there in 2024. Tez Johnson is such a fun skill set and someone that can really expand and open an offense. It'll be interesting to see what he does without Bo Nix this season. And you also have Evan Stewart added to that receiving core as well. And ironically, Evan Stewart's the next up, and he's heading into his junior year. He's at Texas A&M, transferred to Oregon this past year. 6 foot, so good height, but 175. He's pretty light. He's good underneath with some of his sticky movements and has a nice release package when it comes to setting people up underneath. I talked about like the sticky movements, and a lot of that is joysticky or whatever you want to call it. I think people say that term in Madden, so I said, hey, why not use it in a note like a true dummy. At the catch point, yeah, he tracks the ball well, adjusts quickly, and shows good concentration. All of that very nice, but it's hard for him to make his living there, being 6 foot 175, maybe even a little bit smaller. Sure, he shows the ability to do these things well at the catch point, even just like quickly and just be more twitched up than the receiver, than the DB he's against, and just beat him to that catch point or beat him to the ball. But like I said, it's just tough when you're that size to constantly make those plays and win. I really like the potential with his hands. He can really snatch the ball, though there are times he's worried about contact or turning upfield too quick and kind of loses some of that concentration and ends up, one thing or the other goes through his hands, the other, in or through traffic, contact, all that good stuff. Maybe he can't hold on as he's worried too much about, you know, bracing for that impact or that contact. And we'll shuffle to some of the bad stuff here, but he gets moved when he's blocking. He doesn't actually like block. He's basically running up to dudes and putting his arms out, or putting it one arm out, you know, gets up to him. He's like, yeah, man, we're cool, right? We're cool. Yeah. All right. The play's going on behind him and he's just sitting there kind of monitoring him here with one arm. Like, that's going to do something. Sure, he can plant his foot and pivot quickly, and that's change the direction, but in a straight line, I think Evan lacks some of that explosiveness and long speed. What I kind of full circle here, it's two different things: change of direction and straight line. He's good at changing directions. Mostly, you know, he's pretty light. He should be able to have that skill set, but I don't know. I mean, he lacks some of that long speed. Like, I kind of question some of it sometimes, and it looked a lot better last year when he was, I believe even a freshman at Texas A&M. I watched him against Bama as a freshman, and there were times where he looked a lot quicker than he did as a sophomore. Even if he gets to that the NFL level and he chooses to put on some weight, and he might ruin some of that straight line that he already might lack a little bit. And this kind of circles back to what we said earlier, but when he's in a bad spot and knows he can be drilled, or he's exposed and maybe scared or embracing early to catch in traffic, he doesn't always execute. Jump ball is a little bit of a different thing. We talked about the ability at the catch point. I think he does a good job, you know, hanging up there, and you're not going to have a free safety crashing down with 10 yards of a runway, and he's going to absolutely try to take your head off. It's more of beating someone to the catch point, and I guess just withstanding them in the air is more of that jump ball difference. But when he's catching in traffic in an open space and knows like a linebacker can get him or something can happen, he can be drilled. He doesn't always execute, and it doesn't always really look pretty for him. It might seem a little bit lower on Evan Stewart, but he can certainly become a very productive player at Oregon. I think the quick offensive scheme there fits some of the things he excels at, and maybe gives him room to grow and become a true #1 option and receiver at Oregon. And we talk about Tez Johnson. I don't see him as an X receiver or someone that's really going to take over. Evan Stewart, I can see maybe coming back even for a senior year and proving maybe a little bit more. He's had, I don't know if it was injury related, but a whole train wreck. Texas A&M has not been in a good spot, and really just looking for a fresh start with Oregon, I believe. Now we have Miami's slot option, Xavier Restrepo. Like I already mentioned, Miami, and he is, I believe it's, I don't like the word super senior, but that's the only one I know for, like, other than graduate. There's a super senior, I guess. So he's a bit on the older side, 5'10", 198, and like I mentioned, a main slot option for Miami. He's actually a pretty strong blocker when he gets good contact, and I kind of got jumpy when saying this because it's fun watching a smaller guy, you know, come out with some of that dog mentality, get into someone's pads, and have the ability to hold him there or even drive him backwards. And Restrepo did that. Runs quick and shallow routes really, really well. There's no waste of steps, and he's got quite the breaks in his routes as well. And like I mentioned, with these underneath ones, it's a lot easier. You haven't got up to full speed yet. You don't have to decelerate. You don't have to worry about, you know, pivoting and getting out. It's a lot of 1, 2, you're not even up to any speed yet, so you pivot and you build your speed. And he's really, really solid on some of the shallow stuff. Bonafide slot weapon. He can separate, catch screens, work the middle of the field, and make some plays helping the quarterback or working with the quarterback, or even just being in the same spot that the quarterback expects him to be. And he can do that, and he can make those plays. To me, when you're looking at Restrepo, though, there's just the physical limitations. He's a slot only. I don't think he makes a living on the outside. He doesn't play with very great physicality. I don't think he's an amazing athlete, and sure, we can talk about, you know, planting a foot, and route running is a different thing than athleticism, and he just truly isn't that big. 5'10", 198, maybe tax on an extra 5 pounds, and okay, that's, you know, all the power to him, but that's still not big by any means. Restrepo is a very good route runner and a very solid slot option. He can be very productive anywhere he plays just because of that skill set, pairing well with almost all quarterbacks, and forming a good connection with your quarterback can help a lot when playing the slot in the role he plays. You know, if he ends up getting on the same page as Cam Ward in a lot of the situations, who's the new Miami quarterback, by the way, transferred from Washington State, the production Restrepo can have at both the slot or in both college and NFL level, it could be there. He can honestly produce in both just because of that skill set and the history we've seen with guys like him. Next, we have Travis Hunter, who plays cornerback and wide receiver for Colorado heading into his junior year. This will be his second, I believe, with Colorado. 6'1", 185 is where he's listed. And we'll start with the effortless athleticism, and I'll kind of elaborate on that. I mean, when you watch guys, sometimes it looks like it might be a little bit harder to separate maybe a straight line, a 9 route, or a go route on a DB, and the DB just sticks there and there isn't a whole lot going on. Not for Travis Hunter. The way that he kind of works, it just doesn't even look like he's trying, but he's still separating and maybe gaining a few seconds here and there, and gets to point B before the defender can capitalize or track with him or stay with him. And it just looks effortless, like I said. It works with the quarterback pretty well, whether it's, improv situations, still running around trying to give his quarterback an option, late in a play or whatever, quarterback gets out of structure and has to make a play. He does that well, or sits down in open spots, or just seems to be cooperative with the quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. He seems to be pretty sound in those situations as well. He's both cautious and aware of his lack of size. He doesn't have a whole lot of body mass on him, so he makes sure to avoid any unnecessary contact or any hits that you don't want to be taking as a smaller guy. He's quick as all hell and has very good body control. He can catch the ball, stop on a dime, make someone miss, or make some moves or whatever it is, or even run away from guys. We talked about that athleticism. That all kind of ties in together with the athleticism. He's quick, the great body control. Some of that is just like he's a natural athlete. He might not have the best physicality on some of his routes, but when he gets pushed off or when he's in a push and shove battle, he'll still make some nice catches either through contact or coming off of a 7 yards of run and bump, and then all of a sudden he breaks off, he continues running his routes, he doesn't stop trying, and all of a sudden he makes a nice catch or a play, or even breaks off and makes separation at the top of that route, whatever it ends up being. Travis Hunter has made some of those plays. He's a very light player. He doesn't have much mass to support him, and maybe a reason he glides on his feet and has some of that good body control. I believe when you're a little bit lighter, it might be a little bit easier on your legs to haul around a little less weight, a little easier. He's a little bit of an emotional player, and this can get a little controversial, but I think it can cause problems through the media and maybe rub your quarterback or your teammates the wrong way in certain situations. And one that kind of comes to mind is, okay, he's up and he thinks he's open on a nice little corner out or whatever, and he's fit his way between a corner and a safety, but what he doesn't see is either like the safety that fades or the linebacker that's playing like a deeper zone, whatever. He's not actually open when you're looking from the quarterback's point of view, but he feels like he's open. So when Shedeur ultimately ends up not throwing him the ball or ends up throwing the ball away, Travis Hunter, throws his arm up and like, hey, I was open, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, oh, you open up the tape and you don't see that, or says, the wrong thing, or complains, or gets in a fight with his teammates. Either of these things, they can all get twisted, and it can all come with him, and that's, nitpicky and all. But I think that there's some situations where it stands out and could be a problem. Probably you look for him to mature, and he's already really mature for his age and whatnot, and understands a lot of that stuff. And he's a leader as well, and a captain on a team. And yes, he lacks effort, but I'm okay with it. I'm giving him a pass on this one because he does play defense too. He's a two-way player. He plays corner. He plays wide receiver. He plays a lot of snaps regardless. And I will kind of put that aside and say I don't really care that much and whatnot. I'll kind of phrase it this way: there are recruits that come out of high school that are like headed to college, or they're getting recruited out of high school as athletes. They don't, or they aren't listed at any certain position. They could have been track and field guys that are looking to become a player in college football, regardless of what position they end up getting put at. So they be listed as athletes. Think of Hunter as an athlete recruit that can play DB and wide receiver and play both at a really high level, especially if he just stuck to like receiver. I believe he could develop, and I think as a receiver he'd need to add some weight, work on nuance, some of the smaller stuff that comes with playing receiver, a lot of that nuance that we talk about. A lot of pure athleticism is what he's working with right now. He just works on that, and I don't know from a corner standpoint. I haven't got to watching him as a defensive back, but I will. I'm sure I'll get to that soon. But Travis Hunter right now as a receiver just wins a lot with pure athleticism. So think about him more as an athlete recruit as a receiver. than a, receiver coming into the draft, because he's a two-way player and seems to be a little bit better on the corner side and seems to be the stronger way for him to go right now. The mini man, Deion Burks, he's small, but Oklahoma transfer, or sorry, he would be a Purdue transfer heading to Oklahoma. Redshirt junior, 5'9", 189. Man, he's quick and giddy. He pops on tape when looking at the quick and short area movements. He moves very fast. I also like his hands, very natural and fluid process for him. He's a hands catcher, and some of the throws just stick to his hands. Forget about the soft hands phrase or whatever. You want to absorb the contact or the friction, whatever the hell goes on between the science or behind the science of catching a damn football. Forget about it. Just let it pluck out of the air or stick to his hands. After the catch, he can make guys miss, and he can occasionally slip a tackle or absorb a hit, bounce right off of it, which is impressive for his size. The amount of times that I've seen him and kind of bounces off or gets out of a situation that I wouldn't expect a guy of his stature to get out of, and he does it, and he does it with nice and high effort, and he looks like he just has a certain passion to him. You can tell he's got high energy, high effort presence on the field as a player, and I'm sure that's pretty contagious on the practice field and whatnot. I like that a lot from Deion Burks, some of the small scrappy part of Deion, but I think he could be a lot higher on this list if I was more accustomed to the type of build, because I'm not a fan of the size, and I'll just kind of put that, and that is a huge dent in his game for me. He's not big, he's not tall, he's not carrying a lot of human on him. He is pretty tiny, he's small, and I'm not with that. That's a huge dent for me. That's part of the reason he's all the way down here. If he was 5'10", 200, whole different story in the player of Deion Burks. He tries to block, but he physically can't do much when defenders fight back, and that's part of being small, and some of the stuff that we call just you physically can't physically do something. He can't physically block a 6'1", 190-pound boundary corner when it comes down to it. When the defender's trying to get through him, he will most likely get through Deion Burks. I don't see him really as a contested catch guy or someone that's going to be a mismatch versus a boundary corner. He may be fast, but size can cover his caliber of athleticism, and something that we talk about with some of the quicker guys. It's okay, still put him out on the boundary. He can put a boundary corner in a blender in any second. I think he can, but I don't think he has a sort of long speed to just kill teams or whatever. He can make a guy miss at first and maybe get a great release, get past him, but the sort of length that the opposing boundary corner is playing with kind of trumps over Deion Burks. I don't think he has that overwhelming athleticism to become a mismatch on the outside or someone that can be an outlier. He doesn't win, or when he doesn't win at the line, it's tough for him to regain an advantage and make separation, and a lot of this is against more scrappy, nickel corners when, you get shoved up, or even against press when he doesn't get off and all that good stuff. If he just starts a step behind, it's just tough for him to regain any of the advantage in the rep, or make any sort of player separation happen through the rest of that route. But yes, if Deion Burks is put in the right situations at Oklahoma, I have no doubt he'll be productive in that offense. They do lose Dylan Gabriel, which is kind of hit, but I still think he could be a very productive college receiver. I just don't know how he sizes up as a NFL prospect due to some of the limitations we've talked about. We'll talk about Antwane Juice Wells, as they call him, transferred to Ole Miss from South Carolina. He's a super senior, another guy that's just I don't know, maybe he just got credited with another year of eligibility. I don't know what exactly makes someone a super senior. I know there's a graduate student as well, I know that's a thing, but whatever. 6'1", 220 is what he's listed at. He's got some snappy movements, textbook cuts, and the way his head flips around, it all just looks very snappy and instantaneous. And you see those big DK Metcalf's kind of one of those guys where it's very animated in the terms of the way he moves. It's the same thing here with Antwane Wells or Juice Wells, with the way they did kind of bah, and it all looks very instantaneous and snappy. Run after catch opportunities off screens and quicker plays, and he always gains those yards. He doesn't look flashy or anything like Debo, yet he still makes some of those chunk plays. He doesn't make it look pretty. He's not dazzling. He's not dazzling, and he still kind of makes these bigger plays. He's a pretty powerful blocker. The strength and the leverage he uses is very tough to beat if you aren't 220 pounds to match Juice. And I hate saying Juice. I don't know. Antwane seems more formal, but to get fun and, you know, juice, whatever. It's just tough to get past him as a blocker. He's good at blocking, and it's hard not to at 220 pounds. He can make people miss in close quarters. On some of the screens, he had defenders chasing after him, and he made him miss with ease. And like I said, he's not going to dazzle anyone with the way he gets from right to left or from east to west, whatever you call it. He just makes him miss, you know, with a little side skirt. Your skirt, you know, you go past me. And we talked about it, but I don't see where the nickname Juice Wells comes from. To me, he looks less explosive than someone nicknamed Juice. You know, you expect to see a little bit of that juice with Juice Wells, right? But I didn't see that. Definitely didn't play a prototypical role as a receiver. He was more of a weapon for South Carolina. He reminds me quite a bit of Leggett and that sort of body type. I just think Leggett was better as a route runner, pass catcher, and as an athlete. Still fun and unique skill set and a player with Juice Wells, and we'll see how much he excels in a quick offense like Ole Miss and someone that can make some opportunities, but most of his living will probably be after the catch or just going up and getting a football. So a lot of this is on projection, and I'm not projecting him to be a super high NFL prospect because of the skill set here. So Antwane Wells has a lot of upside. I just don't know, and he's had a lot of time to achieve some of this stuff. Injury history, I'm pretty sure, is the thing with Antwane Wells as well. So we'll have to see, and the reason he's pretty low here on this list, or some of the reasons I just kind of listed. We'll talk about kind of a wild card in Ricky White the third out of UNLV. He's heading into his senior year. 6'1", 190. Has the best effort when blocking in this class. It might even be the best blocking receiver overall too, which is kind of crazy. I mean, we just talked about Antwane Wells, who's probably talked about so far as the highest, but Ricky White, like with the blocking effort and the way that he has some of that size advantage against the competition he's playing. I don't know, like it's hard to kind of weigh those things, but he's pretty good and might be one of the better guys in the class. Hands look pretty good. He may play a lower level of football. No, that's not even what it says. He might play at a lower level. Okay, there we go. I fixed it. All right. But he still looks like an NFL pass catcher. And there's a difference in between the two, I believe. I looked at some of the last year's competition at some of the lower levels, and it's like, wow, okay. He caught that, but still. But not with Ricky. He still looked pretty natural, and like I said, looked pretty good in NFL pass catcher-esque, or at least NFL prospect catcher-esque. Runs out-breaking routes as good as anyone in this class, if not better than anyone else in this class. He can plant a foot and get outside very fluidly, instantaneous. It's very nice, quick, fluid cuts for him to get on these like I said, out-breaking routes, I guess. Anything on the out route, comebacks, curls, like all that sort of stuff. Savvy sort of receiver. I think he finds open areas really well. He can tempo his routes as good as anyone and just carves up in zone coverages. And a lot of this sounds like really good speech here, or not speech, good like pros to his game. And so you're like, well, why isn't he higher? And we'll hop into some of that after we talk about the decent run after catch ability. He was creative, making guys miss, turning a field. He get every yard he could get. I liked that. It was good. And like I said, decent run after catch ability. 6'1", 190. His physicality isn't great. When he sees press coverage, Ricky doesn't have an answer most of the time. He gets shoved around and shut down straight away, which is tough. I mean, 6'1", 190, you should have at least a good enough release, if not strength, to get around someone, especially at the level of football he's playing. It's quite a con, and something that kind of stood out to me the worst, or I guess the most, and being the worst thing is the physicality. And we talked about it. I don't think his releases were great. Another reason he struggled against press coverage, and something that just definitely wasn't a strength in his arsenal. It's the release package, releases in general. He wasn't route running at UNLV. He was running basic routes, right? He was running those things like you see on paper. It's like this, and he's doing that exact same thing. He'd run into a zone and he'd stay if he was open. He'd basically run to a spot. If he didn't need to move and he was in open space, he'd stay. If not, you know, he'd kind of move around or whatever. He made a crazy amount of catches underneath. He'd run a 5-yard out all game and pick up 6 catches and 40 yards alone by just doing that. I call him Quick Hit Rick because of the amount of times he runs not even, you know, 7 yards out, turns around at 5 yards or 3 yards and just catches the football. Quick Hit Rick. I genuinely couldn't tell you how athletic Ricky White III is, man. The way he was asked to play the game, I saw glimpses of quickness, and that's it. I didn't see him. I didn't see him athlete at all. He wasn't athleting on the field. He's far from like a prototypical receiver. He lived underneath and finding openings on the field, giving it all he's got, and making the big plays even here and there. or every here and there. I just have a few questions that simply couldn't be answered on the tape. If I had those answered, I would feel a lot better and more sure about my opinions and evaluation on Quick Hit Rick. But for now, he's going to stay Quick Hit Rick and stay at my wide receiver, I believe 12 position here, which is rough. We'll head over to what feels like a fan favorite in Elic Ayomanor, or I've heard it, Ayomanor. Well, that's not it. Stanford's redshirt junior. He's standing at 6'2", 210. At least that's what he's like on paper. Anyways, he's a great, powerful, hardworking blocker, and he's probably the best in the class. The last three receivers we've talked about, probably the best in top three, but I'd say Elic has the upper hand. I'm not going for that last name, man. Slot versatility. He can help more as a blocker, being closer to the play and make some of those run gaps or anything bigger, or even the short little sort of advantages he gives to the team. It's still worth something. So, you know, you put him in the slot, you get him closer to that line, and you kind of make sure that he's in there as well. And we'll talk about that, or keep talking about the strength. We talked about how powerful he is as a blocker, kind of helps as a blocker. And if you want to put him in the slot, you know, as a bigger guy, he can outpower or overpower some of those guys. And he's a strong player with good physicality. He's not the best separator, so he's working through contact most of the time, and he definitely holds up and definitely, you know, holds his own in stride and whatnot, and kind of works through some of the DBs instead of working around or separating from some of the DBs. Thrived on his little slant route. He didn't have to do much but run sideways and use his big frame and leverage to shield out DBs. He ran one hell of a slant route, and he ran it a lot, and it was good for him because of the player you're looking at with Elic. The ability to plant one foot in the ground and then just go one way and use your huge frame to then block out anybody else that can only be coming from behind him. No one's in front of him to mess with this play, and so it worked the best there. And last note I have on him in the pros section, he's tough to bring down after the catch. Talked about it. Basically, this whole thing here is how he's big, how he's strong, and how he's pretty tough and hardworking. That's kind of, I guess, what makes him a fan favorite. So Elic Ayomanor, maybe. Ayomanor, I don't know. It sounded the same to me. And we're going to be brutal with this one, but he doesn't look even sort of fast on tape. Sure, he can pivot and explode out of a one-step break, but doesn't look explosive in any other situations or anything. Lack of release variety and sharp, refined footwork. He's always battling off the line. He's never really clean and untouched, or how did he do that? Or, oh, he kind of just worked his way around, or the DB's playing off. Like, just the way that he gets off the line, it's not really that great. Elic lacks some of the natural athleticism and lacks nuance and refinement in route running. It's tough for him to get open in a pro style route or even offense, but you look at it and he lacks some of the athleticism and then the nuance and then the route running. Like, he just doesn't have any trump card when it comes to getting away from a DB. His releases aren't that sharp. He doesn't even look fast, like I mentioned, with that athletic ability. That offense had him playing in the wrong role, in my opinion. As well respected as I am, you know, I'm telling Stanford how to do their shit. He was also open a lot more in open zones or tempoed his routes underneath. He was much better in a savvy type of underneath, you know, find him and then let him work and maybe drag a guy after the catch or whatever. He was much better in those situations, open a lot more than what they were trying to make him as a receiver, or trying to push him to do stuff that he might not be, you know, skilled for or might not be fit for. As big as he is, I don't think he's great with guys in his face during a contested catch. At that, you know, the catch point, he's up there, someone's in front of him or someone's in his face or whatever. He has a lot more amazing contested plays, but he also gets outplayed at times. As much as he makes these highlight plays, there's definitely some where he just gets outplayed, I guess would be the best way to say it. I thought his hands weren't the best, and maybe even the worst I had seen, up to the point that I had gotten to watch Elic. I have his last name written there. I'm not going to say it. It's tough. I was there earlier. I'm not going to get back there. But either way, he's a bigger, stronger receiver that could be a role-specific player with a certain sort of archetype and offense. I don't know. I like the player. He makes like these wow plays and stuff, but there's something about him that's holding him back. A lot of it is, like I've talked about, through that whole brutal, I kind of tore into him there. I feel kind of bad. Next guy we'll have is Tory Horton, Colorado State's graduate student. He's coming back for another year. Could have come out last year and decided to go back to Colorado State. 6'2", 190. Nice hands catcher. Always love one of those. He can snag it out of the air, and it all looks really natural for him. Really easy, I guess, for him. It looks like he doesn't even have to think twice. Joystick type movement with some of the pivots he has and does, and the ability to stick his foot in the ground and change directions on a dime. Very impressive, in my opinion. Play after play, and unfortunately, I did have a lack of tape on him. I'm not going to lie, and I only had that Colorado game. He lived off one route, but the amount of times he actually made guys miss despite doing the same thing over and over and over again was quite impressive in the way that he was able to move in short areas and whatnot. It was so sick. Kind of ties into this next one here, but short area quickness and acceleration. I don't know about the long speed though. Like, I couldn't tell you. People say he's fast. I wouldn't say like it stood out and something I could see being true, but I'm not going to say it's not because I couldn't tell. I didn't see enough of it. I didn't see an overwhelming athlete though. Like on the field, I didn't see like someone that's like, holy crap, how is he at Colorado State of all places, right? Just like an okay athlete overall from, like, you know, watching some of the other guys and then getting to Tory Horton. He might have had big numbers against Colorado, but it's because he ran 20 shallow crossers and they didn't want to cover it. I don't know. Colorado's head was in the clouds. I don't know what was going on, but he ran about 20 of those shallow crossers, and I'm not even kidding. He probably caught, I don't know, 80% of his catches in that game. Something crazy. He just ran the same route. It worked every time. They didn't want to cover it. They didn't cover it, and he just ran the same thing. So, you know, all the power to him, but it was corny. He did the same thing over and over. It's like a Madden glitch. Tough offense to watch. I mean, like, it was literally just hard to evaluate a receiver in that sort of system because, like I mentioned, they just had the same play running over and over and over again. It was kind of the quarterback was a little weird, but yeah, just a tough offense to watch, like visually. Like, I wanted to switch off that tape. I'm glad I only had one game because I don't know if I could have stood through the second game without offing my pleasant. I'm not going to finish that sentence, but you guys can put the pieces together here. Tory Horton has a high upside for sure. That offense is limiting Horton and his skill set. I really like the way he can move very quickly in short areas and make anyone miss at any time. And that's kind of the breakdown here for Tory Horton and my thoughts on it. Another guy from last year that could have come out is J. Michael Sturdivant. The UCLA, I think he transferred from Cal just last year, 2 years ago. I don't know. Redshirt Junior, 6'3", 205 is where he's listed. I don't know about, I don't know. He did look pretty big. His footwork and his long strides are really quick and effective. Some tall and lengthy guys have weird footwork, but his looks particularly good. And we talked about Tetairoa McMillan, my wide receiver 1 in this video, early on in this video, and how it kind of looked good for 6'5". J. Michael Sturdivant, probably not in that same caliber, but for 6'3", it looks pretty good. Deep speed and go routes are a big strong suit for Sturdivant, and someone I can see like really, you know, his archetype as a deep threat, lengthy, go up and get a sort of receiver. I really like that sort of skill set for him. And like I mentioned, the archetype and something he kind of profiles as coming out. I think he has tremendous effort when he's adjusting to the quarterback situation, trying to get open, adapt to the quarterback, you know, maybe rolling out, maybe there's pressure, maybe he has to sit down right away. He tries to, you know, improv, you know, quarterback gets pressured, he's rolling out of the pocket. J. Michael Sturdivant takes instantaneous action, running back around, trying to get him there. So, big strong suit for Michael Sturdivant, or J. Michael Sturdivant, getting deep, and then also I think adapting with his quarterback. He tries his hardest to do that, and has some good opportunities and plays there. I think he has some rounded routes and some of the cuts in his routes and the way that he kind of breaks. It's very rounded, and we mentioned footwork earlier, and that's kind of, you know, the releases look good, but the rounded routes and whatnot, like the route running wasn't holy crap, wow. And in fact, they weren't wowing at all. They kind of just rounded off and not really a whole lot going. Clearly not a focal point or a first option for UCLA in that offense. I think this might have been his like first year in that offense and whatnot, but he clearly wasn't like a difference maker or someone they saw in practice and said, hey, we have to get Sturdivant the ball. I don't think he was seen as one of those guys within his own organization or college, I should say. Flimsy and low effort as a blocker. He could be overpowered or maybe even just pushed aside a bit. He's better when he's bringing the block to the defender and trying to make sure he kind of secures it first. But when he's, you know, when the guy's coming down, he's like, you know, I don't wanna, you know, kind of dodge that situation there. Not a separator or someone that constantly wins against like those number 2 corners or nickel corners when he's playing in the slot. He's just not winning against some of those guys. And like I mentioned, he wasn't really like a focal point for UCLA. So maybe saw some of the second best corners against the defenses he was seeing and still couldn't win, or someone that was like constantly, like I mentioned, finding himself open a whole lot against some of these guys. Well, hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, go down and subscribe, go watch any of the past content on the channel. It would help me out a lot, and we have a lot more fun videos coming your way, a lot of them including the 2025 class, maybe a few things that you find yourself interested in. Just make sure to stop back. You don't always have to leave that subscribe button. Just see myself as an option for you to watch. You know, it's fun. It's always great here. I'm trying to put together good videos, and if you guys have any suggestions to make the channel or the videos better, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.